Oh my gosh, let me tell you about this unbelievable situation. So Brenda completely lost it when she didn't snag that promotion she was gunning for. Instead of, being a grown-up about it, she just up and quit on the spot, burning bridges faster than a California wildfire in August. I mean, can you even imagine? I can't believe they picked Tiffany over me. Brenda wailed, sobbing uncontrollably into my shoulder that awful day. Do you know how long I've worked there? How incredibly hard I've tried. I remember sitting in my brand new apartment, the one I was so thrilled to finally rent after graduation, listening to her tearful rant. Honestly, I figured she'd chill out after a few weeks, maybe even find a better gig. Boy, was I wrong. 7 whole months crawled by while she processed everything, and then another 7 months of her only applying to these ridiculously specific jobs. That's how my folks delicately explained her unemployment. Meanwhile, guess who was making sure my parents' bills got paid? Yep, yours truly. I was the one keeping food in their fridge and making sure Brenda could keep seeing her therapist 4 times a week. The therapy is really helping her, Mom would chirp as I transferred yet another chunk of my hard-earned paycheck into their account. She's making progress. Progress from where I stood. All I saw was more and more money draining from my bank account. I saw my sister lounging around at our childhood home, endlessly scrolling through job listings with these insane requirements, like jobs with 5-day weekends and unlimited vacation time. Seriously. And me, I was pulling overtime at my marketing job, taking on extra clients, barely even having time to breathe. This past year had been utterly exhausting for all of us. I could see the strain etched on my parents' faces, too. Mom's forehead seemed permanently furrowed with worry lines, and Dad's shoulders slumped lower every single time Brenda rejected another perfectly good job for not being good enough. Looking at my worn-out parents, I knew we all desperately needed something good to look forward to. That's when I started secretly planning a trip to Rome. Just for the 3 of us, I spent weeks meticulously organizing every single detail. The perfect boutique hotel, private tours, and experiences tailored just for them. A cheese tasting tour for Mom, who had always dreamed of trying authentic Italian cheese. A vineyard and wine tour for Dad, who appreciated a good glass of red. I truly thought this trip would be the perfect escape, a chance for us to finally forget all the stress and create some happy memories together. I imagined us strolling along the cobblestone streets of Trastevere, sharing wine at cozy little cafes, and finally seeing my parents smile again without that constant cloud of worry hanging over them. But as they say, life can change in a heartbeat. One minute I was driving to meet a client, my mind buzzing with my presentation and the upcoming trip. The next, there was this deafening crash, the sickening screech of metal, and then nothing. I don't remember much about the accident, just these fragmented images. Flashing sirens, paramedics shouting those harsh, blinding overhead lights. When I finally woke up, I was in a sterile hospital bed, my entire body throbbing like one giant agonizing bruise. The doctor explained that I needed emergency surgery, but thankfully it had gone well. Still, he said, I wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. You're incredibly lucky, a kind nurse told me as she adjusted my IV drip. The airbag saved you from the worst of it, but that other car hit you hard. I was still all groggy and disoriented when my parents and Brenda walked into the room. Mom was clutching her favorite travel purse, the one she'd bought specifically for the Rome trip. Seeing it made my stomach plummet. I'm so sorry, I croaked, my voice raspy from the breathing tube. We'll have to postpone the trip. Don't worry, I'll cancel everything today, and we can go when I'm better. I fully expected them to be understanding, maybe even a little disappointed, but still supportive. But what happened next, I was absolutely not prepared for it. Instead of offering comfort, Mom spoke in this strangely calm voice. Oh, there's no need to cancel anything, honey. I blinked, convinced the painkillers were making me hallucinate. Your dad and I have been talking, she continued, adjusting the strap of her purse. And we think we should still go. You can rest here, and we'll take Brenda with us instead. Her words hit me harder than that other car. I just stared at them, waiting for someone to say it was a terrible joke. Brenda's been through a lot this year, Mom added, patting my sister's arm with this dismissive gesture. She really needs this break too. Then, Brenda actually stepped forward. "You were supposed to watch the house while we were gone," she stated matter-of-factly. "Since you can't, you'll need to hire someone. Make sure they're reliable." I lay there, my mouth hanging open, completely speechless. This couldn't be real. My own family was standing there, casually discussing their vacation while I was lying in a hospital bed less than a day after major surgery. Then they actually waved goodbye and walked out, leaving me alone with the steady rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the crushing realization that they had just abandoned me for a trip I had planned and paid for. I lay in bed for what felt like an eternity, just staring blankly at the ceiling, desperately trying to make sense of it. Even the strong pain meds couldn't dull the agonizing ache in my chest, the one that had absolutely nothing to do with my physical injuries. They hadn't even asked how I was feeling. Not about the surgery, not about the accident, not about anything. I whispered to myself, the words barely audible. A nurse passed by for the third time, probably noticing my heart rate spiking on the monitor. She stopped in the doorway, genuine concern etched on her face. "Everything okay, honey? Your numbers are a bit high." "My phone," I blurted out, suddenly remembering. "Could you please get my phone? It should be with my things." A few minutes later, she returned with a flimsy plastic hospital bag. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone. Relieved to see the screen wasn't shattered, it lit up with my old background, a cheesy Christmas picture of me and my parents. I quickly changed it to the default wallpaper. "At least something survived the crash," I muttered bitterly. Then I opened my email app, and there it was. My Rome trip folder overflowing with all the confirmations and meticulously crafted plans I had poured so much time and effort into. I stared at it for a long moment. "Well," I said to myself, my fingers hovering over the first email, "if they want to treat me like a travel agent instead of a daughter, I'll act like one." And one by one, I started canceling everything first. The hotel, a few clicks, and the beautiful suite with that stunning view of the Municipio Ein was gone. Next, all the private tours. Mom's precious cheese tour, canceled Dad's much-anticipated wine tour. Gone the private guide for the Vatican, the romantic evening cruise on the Tiber, the skip the line. Passes for the Colosseum. Canceled, canceled, canceled. With each cancellation, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Sadness, yes, because I had genuinely dreamed of sharing these experiences with my parents. But also something else. Not exactly satisfaction, but maybe a sense of justice. They had treated my serious accident as a mere inconvenience. They had chosen to take Brenda, who hadn't lifted a finger to contribute in over a year, on a trip that I had painstakingly paid for, while I lay here broken in a hospital bed. The last thing left to cancel was their return flight. I stared at the confirmation for a long, drawn-out moment before finally clicking the button. A small, petty part of me actually wondered how they'd react when they landed in Rome with no hotel, no tours, and no way to get back home. Once everything was officially canceled, I put my phone on silent, placed it face down on the bedside table, and finally closed my eyes. They'd figure it out soon enough. Maybe somewhere over the vast Atlantic, they'd finally realize that actions have consequences even within families. Maybe, just maybe, when they landed in Rome with absolutely nothing waiting for them, they'd finally understand what it felt like to be abandoned and left to fend for themselves. The first frantic message pinged through at 3:25 a.m. They must have just arrived in Rome and gone to check into the hotel. My phone lit up on the table, buzzing silently, despite the dull ache in my ribs. I actually smiled a little. By breakfast, I had 15 missed calls. By lunch, a staggering 40. The text messages started flooding in too. I kept a little tally on the back of my flimsy hospital meal menu, just for morbid amusement. Missed calls: Mom, 25, Dad, 18. Brenda, a whopping 48. Text messages: 50 and counting, voicemails. 21, I smirked. Let's see what was so incredibly urgent that they felt the need to blow up a recovering hospital patient's phone. When the count finally passed 51, I reluctantly picked up my phone, wincing slightly as I moved. Brenda's messages were first predictably dramatic. "How could you be so cruel and selfish? We're standing in the hotel lobby with nowhere to go. You're absolutely heartless." Then came Mom's guilt-tripping, Isabella, I am so incredibly disappointed in you. This isn't how we treat family. We have never done anything like this to each other before. I just don't understand why you're doing this to us. Your parents, I stared at the screen, shaking my head in disbelief. Now they wanted to talk about family. I couldn't help but let out a dry, humorless laugh, even though it tugged painfully at my stitches. We've never done anything like this to each other before, really. What about leaving your injured daughter in a hospital bed to go on a vacation she paid for? Dad's messages were shorter but just as demanding. Call now. Fix this immediately, your mother is crying. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. New messages popped up faster than I could even read them. The hotel won't let us check in. Where are our tour reservations? What do you mean you canceled the return flights? Answer your phone right now. I was in the middle of reading a particularly nasty message from Brenda about how I had ruined everything when Dr. Olivier walked in, his expression serious. Ms. Wilson, he said, his voice firm. Your phone has been ringing nonstop for hours. This is a hospital, not a call center. We need a quiet environment for all our patients. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, doctor. It's just... Before I knew it, I was spilling everything. The accident, the Rome trip, I had meticulously planned my family's unbelievable reaction, and how I had canceled everything in a fit of, well, something. He listened intently, his expression growing more and more concerned. Just then, my phone rang again. My mom's name flashed across the screen. Without hesitation, Dr. Olivier picked it up. Hello, this is Dr. Olivier from Memorial Hospital. I need to ask you to stop calling. Your daughter needs rest and is about to have a second surgery. Even from across the room, I could hear Mom's shrill voice through the speaker. I don't care about any operation. Put my daughter on the phone right now. She needs to fix what she did to us. Doctor. Olivier's face shifted, first shock, then disbelief, then a flicker of anger. Without another word, he hung up. I'll be keeping this until after your surgery, he said firmly, slipping my phone into his pocket. You need to focus on healing, not dealing with this. For the next few days, everything was a blur of pain meds and fitful sleep. Without my phone, I had absolutely no idea what was happening with my family stranded in Rome. But honestly, the silence was surprisingly healing. But life, as it often does, had a funny way of surprising me. Knock knock, on my 4th day after surgery, Karine from marketing peeked into my room. We brought contraband, she whispered with a mischievous grin. She and Nick from accounting had somehow managed to sneak in real coffee from the cafe down the street. The next day, Brittany and James from my team showed up with a stack of glossy magazines and all the juicy office gossip. And the day after that, my cousin Mary, who I hadn't seen in months, came by with a container of her amazing homemade soup. We've got a schedule worked out, Brittany announced proudly, holding up a color-coded spreadsheet on her tablet. Someone from the office will stop by every day. We can't have our best project manager getting lonely. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly cared for. Tears welled up in my eyes. You guys didn't have to do this. I choked out. Oh, please. James waved off my protest. After all the times you've helped us out, this is nothing. Even my usually gruff boss, Mr. Ryan, had called the hospital himself. Isabella, don't you worry about a thing. He'd set his voice, surprisingly gentle. The accident happened during work hours, so our insurance covers you. You'll be getting a good payout. It should help with your recovery, and more. On my 5th day without my phone, Dr. Olivier returned and placed it gently on my bedside table. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, he said kindly. But I'd completely understand if you wanted to leave it off a little longer. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Over 125 missed calls, countless text messages, dozens of voicemails. I started reading from the very beginning, watching how their messages had morphed over time. The first ones were pleading. Isabella, you have to understand our side. We're family. We can work this out. Then came the heavy guilt trips. How could you embarrass us like this? We don't deserve this kind of treatment. And finally, the outright anger. You won't believe the dump we're staying in, Brenda had written. There are bed bugs. Dad's sleeping on a cot. We hear gunshots at night. Mom's messages were equally dramatic. We can barely afford food. We're eating from street vendors like homeless people. We haven't gone on a single tour or seen anything properly. Is this what you wanted, to make your parents suffer? The latest message was a furious demand for return tickets home, followed by multiple thinly veiled threats about what would happen if I didn't fix things immediately. With a sigh, I placed the phone face down on the table just as another knock came at my door. It was Sophie from HR, holding a deck of cards and a bag of suspiciously fragrant cookies she had clearly smuggled in. Ready to learn poker? She asked with a warm grin. I looked at her, then at my silent phone, and I made a choice. I turned my phone off completely and smiled. Deal me in. I was actually having a genuinely good day when they burst in. My physical therapist had just finished our session, and I felt this incredible sense of accomplishment. I had managed to walk a few shaky steps on my own. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of rolling suitcases on the linoleum hospital floor. My only warning, seconds later, they stormed into my room like a full-blown hurricane. How dare you? Mom's face was a mask of red-hot fury, still clad in her wrinkled travel clothes. How dare you do this to us? Right behind her, Brenda dragged her ridiculously expensive designer suitcase, the one I had bought her last Christmas. Her eyes blazing with indignant rage, Dad stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking both angry and deeply embarrassed. Nurse Kate, who had been adjusting my IV drip, quickly stepped protectively between them and my bed. Lower your voices. This is a hospital, not a circus tent. But they were beyond listening. 3 weeks of pent-up frustration exploded out of Brenda like a burst dam. She's fine here, Brenda shrieked, throwing her hands up in this exaggerated gesture, motioning around my private hospital room. Look at her, lying in a clean bed, getting 3 meals a day while we suffered. Something inside me just snapped. Maybe it was the lingering effects of the painkillers giving me a false sense of courage. Or maybe I had finally truly had enough suffered. My voice was quiet, but it had this sharp edge. Let's talk about suffering, shall we? The room fell into a stunned silence. For the past year, I have worked myself to the bone, paying your bills, buying your groceries, covering Brenda's 4 times a week therapy sessions while she sat at home turning down perfectly good jobs because they weren't perfect enough. Mom opened her mouth to interrupt, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. Not this time. I planned this trip as a gift. I spent months organizing every single detail. I paid for it all with my own hard-earned money. Then I got into a serious car accident, needed emergency surgery. And what did you do? Did you ask how I was feeling? Did you even care if I was okay? No, you took Brenda, the person who hasn't contributed a single penny to this family in over a year, on my vacation while I lay here broken in a hospital bed. I saw the first flicker of shame cross Mom's face, but it vanished almost immediately. You can afford to go to Rome anytime, she snapped dismissively. This might have been our only chance. Then Brenda, my own sister, delivered the final gut-wrenching blow. Besides, she said coldly, you might have been left disabled after the accident. Then you definitely would have canceled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad. We should go while everything was still paid for. The room went deathly silent. Even Mom looked momentarily shocked by Brenda's callous admission. My fingers trembled as I reached for the call button. The speaker crackled to life. Security, please. I need 4 people escorted out of my room, and I want them added to the restricted visitors list. Isabella, don't you dare! Mom started, her voice rising in hysteria. But it was too late. 3 imposing security guards stepped into the room. This patient is recovering from major surgery, one of them said firmly. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I watched a strange sense of detached satisfaction washing over me as they were led away. Mom's angry shouts echoed down the sterile hallway. Dad's uncharacteristic silence spoke volumes, and Brenda's indignant protests faded as they disappeared from sight. The very next day, I did something I should have done months, maybe even years ago. I blocked their numbers. All of them. My finger hovered over Dad's contact for a fraction of a second longer than the others. But in the end, his passive silence had been just as damaging as their outright selfishness. Then I opened my banking apps. With a decisive swipe, I canceled all the automatic payments I had religiously set up for my family. No more monthly transfers for Brenda's endless therapy sessions. No more silently paying their ever-increasing utility bills. No more grocery money that seemed to vanish into thin air. A wave of lightness washed over me as if a massive weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could actually breathe. 3 long weeks later, I was finally discharged from the hospital. Stepping back into my quiet apartment felt like entering a sanctuary. My incredible work friends had rallied together, cleaning it from top to bottom, stocking the fridge with healthy food, and even placing a beautiful vase of fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. No family drama, no manipulative guilt trips, no relentless financial demands. Just blessed peace and quiet. I focused entirely on getting better. I diligently did my physical therapy exercises, slowly regaining my strength. I even started working remotely, easing back into my routine. Life gradually settled into a new rhythm, one that didn't revolve around constantly fixing my family's self-inflicted problems. Then about a month after I left the hospital, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from various cousins and family friends. Mom had apparently taken her grievances public, posting a lengthy woe is me status on Facebook. My own daughter has abandoned us in our time of need, she wailed online. After everything we've done for her, she has turned her back on her poor struggling parents. Brenda can't find work, bills are piling up, and Isabella won't even return our calls. Some of her less informed friends, bless their oblivious hearts, jumped in to offer their condolences and express their outrage. How terrible after raising such an ungrateful child. Family should always come first. I'll pray for your daughter to come back to you. I was about to close the app in disgust when a new comment popped up. It was from my cousin Mary, a voice of reason in our often dramatic family. Aunt Linda, are you seriously playing the victim here? You left Isabella alone in the hospital, fresh out of emergency surgery, after a serious car accident to go on a vacation she paid for. You took Brenda, who hasn't contributed a dime, instead of supporting your own injured daughter. We all know what really happened. Then the floodgates opened. More relatives started chiming in, sharing the unvarnished truth. How I had financially supported my parents for over a year, while Brenda stubbornly refused to find suitable employment. How I had meticulously planned the Rome trip as a selfless gift. How my work friends and cousins had been the ones visiting me in the hospital, while my own parents were off gallivanting across Europe. 3 days later, Mom's self-pitying post mysteriously disappeared, but by then screenshots were already circulating like wildfire in the family group chat. Her desperate attempt to paint herself as the victim had spectacularly backfired. 4 months after the life-altering accident, I walked into my office without my cane for the very first time. My steps felt steady and confident, my head held high. All those grueling physical therapy sessions had finally paid off. I was back to normal, maybe even stronger, both physically and emotionally than before. I had braced myself for a quiet first day back. Maybe a few polite inquiries by the coffee machine. Instead, I walked in to find my entire team gathered around my desk, a massive celebratory cake-taking center stage. "Welcome back, Isabella," they all cheered in unison. The sight of the cake, this unexpected outpouring of genuine warmth, actually took my breath away. 3 beautiful tiers of vanilla and chocolate adorned with delicate fondant flowers, and on top a tiny triumphant figurine of a woman standing tall. Tears welled up in my eyes. "You guys," I started, my voice thick with emotion, but I couldn't quite finish the sentence. Karine pulled me into a gentle hug, while Nick started expertly cutting the cake. "Oh, and this came for you," Brittany said, handing me a thick envelope. It was from the insurance company, surrounded by my chosen family, my work family. I nervously opened it right there and nearly dropped it when I saw the settlement amount. There were more zeros than I had ever imagined. That night, sitting in the peaceful solitude of my apartment with a generous slice of leftover cake, I opened my laptop and idly started browsing travel websites. The same luxurious boutique hotel in Rome I had booked before popped up in my search results. Without a moment's hesitation, I checked availability for 4 months from now. "Single room this time," I murmured to myself, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips as I clicked Book Now. Next, I booked the tours, the very same ones I had so carefully planned before, but this time designed for a solo traveler: delightful cheese tasting tour, the picturesque vineyard and wine tour, the insightful private guide for the Vatican. I booked them all. This time, every single experience would be exactly what I wanted, with absolutely no compromises. My phone buzzed, another desperate attempt from my estranged family. A guilt-ridden text from Mom. "We miss you." A pleading voicemail from Dad. An overly dramatic email from Brenda. Earlier that week, they had even sent an enormous, ridiculously expensive bouquet of lilies to my apartment. I had promptly thrown them straight into the dumpster. The latest message was from an unknown number. "Isabella, it's Mom. Please just talk to us. We're still family." I deleted it without even a second thought. Turning back to my laptop, I watched the confirmation emails roll in. Hotel tours, flights. But this time, seeing them didn't fill me with stress or obligation. I wasn't planning for anyone else. I wasn't managing anyone's unrealistic expectations. I felt nothing but pure, unadulterated excitement. Pushing my laptop aside, I walked over to the window and gazed out at the glittering city lights. 3 more months and I would be walking the ancient streets of Rome, savoring delicious food at charming cafes, exploring world-renowned museums, creating my own memories on my own terms. My phone buzzed again, another insistent call from an unknown number. Undoubtedly another family member trying to guilt-trip me. I didn't even glance at it. Instead, I closed my laptop, a feeling of profound peace settling over me. I opened my photo gallery and, with a decisive swipe, deleted all the old family pictures I had been subconsciously holding on to. It was time for new photos, new memories, new adventures. Sometimes the family you choose, your loyal friends, supportive coworkers, and even kind strangers who become more than just acquaintances, matters far more than the family you're born into. I had learned that lesson the hard way. But standing there, a sense of joyful anticipation bubbling inside me as I planned my solo Roman holiday. I knew one thing for absolute certain: I would never forget it. Valuable lesson for the audience. This story powerfully illustrates the importance of setting healthy boundaries even with family. It reminds us that we are not obligated to sacrifice our own well-being for those who consistently take advantage of our kindness and lack empathy. Sometimes severing ties, however painful, is necessary for self-preservation and allows us to create space for genuine supportive relationships. Don't let guilt or societal expectations trap you in toxic dynamics. Your peace and happiness are paramount. What are your thoughts on the situation? Have you ever had to set tough boundaries with family? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more compelling narratives.